New discovery. The temperature was a cool 58 degrees. The climb through the valley up into the mountains was strenuous. Logan was following the group as they trekked closer to the Drakensberg Mountains in South Africa. He was an adventurer. He always loved the idea of going to faraway places and possibly discovering what no one else had. He had taken archaeology and studied lost languages at the university. He now wanted more than ever to make his name discovering something that had not yet been uncovered. This area offered a look into the past with petroglyphs and pictographs on stones. Logan wanted to try his hand at deciphering the long ago, scratched or painted in stone, pictures. He had his friend and colleague from the university with him. Colin was more of a traveler, but also enjoyed the adventure. He was proficient at cultures, having studied them extensively. He was not as concerned with the pictures as he wanted to meet the real people of the land. He walked with a stick, a sort of cane, supporting the leg he had injured in a brutal rugby match. The two had made it to a summit overlooking a valley with protrusions of stone on either side. The view was breathtaking as they stopped for a rest to take in the sight. The others in the group were spreading out looking down the long valley. Logan said to Colin as they sat on the top of a flat rock, "You know, the best thing for us to do is venture off away from this beaten tourist path. If we are to find anything new, we need to go a different direction." So true it is. This has been walked over many times, it seems. What do you have in mind? Logan turned around and pointed. It would seem, my good man, that we should venture off in that direction. We could follow the ridge further to the northeast. That, at some point, should take us to new places. But what of supplies? Surely we will need them. I packed enough for 3 days, and you? I can go 3 days. By then we should find a village or town and could resupply. I see no danger in that. Very well. Let's do... They moved away from the group and looked over their shoulders several times to see if they were noticed. After a short time, they could not see anyone else. The two walked for miles. Soon the light of the day was fading, as well as the temperature. The evening sunset brought them to a narrow crevice suitable for a camp. They gathered wood, and as the dark surrounded them, they warmed by the fire that provided the only light. The sky was now filled with millions of stars. The next day they traveled and managed to walk over 25 miles. They again set up camp, this time in an open grassy stretch of land between the rocky hills. Logan and Colin sat wondering what they might find. Then, among the various sounds, they heard the bleating bay of sheep. Colin knew right away why they were hearing them. He told Logan, "Basotho shepherds, most likely. They would be around this area." Logan agreed. The morning light brought a sunrise that showed them the splendor of the rocky green-covered mountains all around them. They took in the beauty of the landscape. Logan was ready to venture up into the mountains to scout the area. He spotted a single stone face of rock that looked different and stood out from the other stone peaks. He pointed to the odd protrusion. "What do you think of that, Colin? It looks out of place compared to the rest of what I'm seeing." "Yes, almost as if it were singled out by the elements. Strange indeed. We should go investigate. It would also give me a vantage point to see where the shepherds are in the area. I would most desperately love to visit and talk with them. We may also see if we can get some supplies from them today. Maybe a slice of lamb for dinner." "Sounds like a plan. Let's do." As they walked the valley floor, they both were entertained by the bearded vultures, Cape crows, and the flashing past of white-throated swallows. The two then climbed the steep grade, coming to the base of the large rock protrusion. Walking around the base, they found several paths of huge stones that had long ago fallen from high above. They used them as stepping stones, getting them closer to the top. They found what now appeared to be a smooth path that wound around and up. They continued to follow the path, getting even higher. Then the path opened up to a larger flat area. The face of the rock was sheer and straight up. They had a fantastic panoramic view of the valley below. After taking in the breathtaking sight, Colin looked to see if they could continue to move even higher. Then he noticed the almost cave-like overhang in the rock just ahead. He moved to the overhang and informed Logan, "You may want to take a look at this." Logan walked over and was instantly amazed at the pictograph on the back of the overhang wall. "Wow, Colin, look at that. That is the most awesome set of pictos I've seen yet. I don't recognize them from what I've seen before. We may have found something here." "Well, my good man, while you look them over, I'm going to find a spot to look over the valley to find those shepherds." Colin was not surprised that Logan did not answer him. Logan was talking to himself and studying the wall painting. When Colin returned after the better part of an hour, he found Logan scribbling in a small notebook. He broke his attention as he said, "So have we discovered the old world with new insight, or were they hunting the lost monsters? I think I have something here. Not sure, but take a look." "Well, good buddy. I hate to break up your fun, but we need to get moving back down and across the valley. The shepherds are on the move, and we need to get moving if we intend to catch them. Check this out. See, they drew a scene of a place where they were looking down on the valley, almost like an upside-down V shape. There are tall hills or rocks on either side. There are fires spaced out along the top of the hills, and down in the valley there is a river or creek. They have the sun or moon shining light, but most likely the moon since the fires show bright light as well. Then check this out. I don't know why this figure at this end of the valley is so much larger than anyone else depicted. That seems strange. Right, a giant of sorts. Maybe this guy thought he was bigger than the others, being so high up. But the figure is on the other end facing him? Logan, we need to go. We can come back. We need to get down and find those shepherds." The two made their way down, and Colin was having them run to catch the group of herders far on the other side of the valley. As the sun was getting low on the horizon, they had caught up and was welcomed by the shepherds now setting up camp for the night. The fires were started, and everyone gathered around for the evening meal. Logan and Colin were treated to the finest meal. Then the conversation turned as Logan asked about the area they were in. It was an elder of the herdsmen that told the story. "We only pass through this area twice a year. We move the sheep through, only stopping for 2 nights. This land is cursed with the giants. They come out from their mountain caves and scour the area looking for anything to eat. We know the timing and it is near. I have seen this painting on a stone overhang wall not far from here." Logan showed the elder the scribbled sketch he had made. "Yes, that is the valley just behind us on the other side of this ridge. We do not venture in that valley because of the giants. That warning is from long ago, and the story has been passed down that the fathers that resided in that valley were eaten by the giants. Only one boy escaped the horror to tell of this. The signal fires will appear on both sides of the valley as a warning when they come. In 2 days the moon will be full, and that is when the giants appear." Colin asked, "What is the best way to get to this valley?" "It will take 2 days' journey from here. You go to the south following this ridge and must go past the lake. On the other side of the lake is the river that fills the lake. Follow that river and it will take you into the valley of the giants. I must warn you that if you go into the valley, you will not return." Logan and Colin looked at each other with a new sense of adventure. The next morning, they started the journey south. They found the lake and was impressed with the diversity of birds and wildlife. They made a nearly complete circle around the lake before finding the river that filled it. They only managed to move a couple of miles up the river before the day was ending, stopping their progress. The next day they started early and struggled through the thick growth next to the river. The tall tree canopy offered little view to what lay ahead. They struggled into the late afternoon. Then suddenly the thick growth seemed to disappear, and they stood in wonder at the high peaks of rock covered in green. This area was as beautiful as any they had seen so far on their journey. Looking around, Logan pointed out, That's the spot up there on the other end of this. That is where the fellow stood to see the scape in the picture. We need to go up there." "That's great, another climb. My leg is killing me, but onward and upward we must go." Come on, Colin, just one more climb today. They began to move through the valley floor. It started narrow and opened wider as they walked. Then at the other end, they started up to the long slope. The high rock formation had several layers looking like huge steps. The two continued to climb each level until they were at the top. They took their packs off and sat just under the overhang in the shade of the last step. The view was fantastic as they looked down and into the inverted V valley. Logan, after a short rest, stood and could imagine the sight related to the picture on the rock. Colin, this is exactly like the picture in the cave. What did that shepherd say? They come on a full moon night? That's tonight. Yes, and look at the way the trees look at the other end of the valley. There is a set of the trees that resemble the shape of a huge person. Suppose the moon and shadows make it look like a live giant. Well, we will see tonight, I hope. They set up camp under the overhanging stone and waited for the sun to set. The millions of stars were now taking over, and just above the horizon, the full moon was rising. Logan woke Colin from his evening slumber. As he was waking, Logan informed him, "There are several groups of people all along the ridge moving about. It looks like they are setting up for the signal fires." Colin moved to the edge of the rock, looking out, rubbing his eyes. He looked up to see the moon and stars had arrived. He squinted to see the activity far in the distance. Wow, I see them. That's exactly what the shepherd said would happen. I wonder who they are. For the next several hours they sat and watched from their rock shelter. The moon was now at its peak overhead. The valley was lit with the full brightness of the moon on the cloudless night. Then, one by one, on both sides of the valley, the fires started to appear. The two watched as each fire was started. Then there was a rumbling tremor that was felt in the ground. Screams could be heard in the distance. A large, dark, moving shadow appeared on the horizon. Then it could be seen. Logan and Colin stood in disbelief as they saw the giant. It appeared to be just like a human in shape, arms, legs, feet, and hands, but a face of hideous features. The creature stood now at the narrow end of the valley and was twice as tall as any tree, nearly as tall as the mountains around. The giant used one of the mountain ridges to put a hand on to steady itself as it peered over the ridge to look for a meal. Then the rumbling continued. Colin was the first to notice, saying in a scared, shaking voice, "The ground is still shaking even when it stopped walking." Logan stood frozen and in horror as he was watching. He had noticed the rumbling also. Then, from over the top of the overhang, a giant's foot cast a shadow over them. They both turned around, looking up to see the foot coming down. Logan could only stand and watch as Colin screamed just before the foot came down, crushing him. The sounds of the bones snapping and crunching shook Logan to the core. The giant, realizing it had stepped on something and hearing the scream, looked down to see Logan. The giant hand immediately swooped down, picking Logan off the ground. Logan kicked and squirmed in the grasp of the giant hand, yelling out. The giant raised him high above his head and dropped him in his wide-open, gaping mouth head first. Logan landed on the soft, wet tongue and screamed in pain and horror as the teeth of the giant came together, smashing his legs and hip. He felt the tongue lift and resituate him again in the open teeth. He heard the deep from the giant just before the teeth and powerful jaw crushed the life out of him.